This is something that means something. These are people fighting against, and that is something that matters to me. I do believe, I don't like oppression. As a young man, I had to fight against homophobia much of my life, and I've encountered many people, and I realized that that's not okay with me. And I very much value it when people do open their mouths and stand up for what is right and just. So I want to point out something. A lot of people who were going to be involved with this show actually had to withdraw because they were afraid. They were afraid that China might retaliate against them or their families. That's horrifying. You look around at what's going on in the world right now. Look what's going on with Russia and Putin. Here's a man who is known for assassinating his enemies. Kind of reminds you of a government where they think, oh, well, you're an artist or you're a college professor. That means you have opinions that are going to be different from what we want. We've got to kill you too. All right? And so the thing is, it is hard to stand up in an environment like that. It isn't easy when you have to really be afraid, not only that you could be hurt or your family could be hurt, you could be killed. So when I see people who stand up, who are willing to open their mouths and put themselves at risk, to me, those are heroes. That's what the world needs, and it is not easy. And so I want to applaud these two gentlemen that we are honored to have here tonight. Two people who put their lives on the line, who are willing to stand up and fight for what's right. I would first like to say a few words about Wang, who is a renowned human rights activist and perhaps the face of the Tiananmen protests. This is a man, if you look at his picture when he was a lot younger, he looked really great. I guess we all do look better when we're younger. You look at his face, and look at that picture, and I see somebody who is passionate and lit up, willing to open his mouth, and it's beautiful. He happens to also be a theater person, something he has loved most of his life. And he had played an instrumental role in leading the 1989 Tiananmen protests. And his reward for doing that was spending a couple of years in prison. Lucky enough, he got to get exiled, so at least he didn't get killed. Yay! And since coming here, being exiled to the United States, he didn't shut up. He's still been fighting for change in China and to advancing democracy and human rights. So, wonderful. Thank you so much. And his support has really made this happen and lit us all up, so thank you. JinJin, another organizer, another hero of Tiananmen, who stood up and fought. And as opposed to a background as a college student and artist, he was a soldier. And that's very relevant to tonight's show. It's very important to see somebody who is caught in a situation like that. And you know, you have to act, you have to do things, you're caught in the circumstances, and yet sometimes you have to step outside and realize what is really good and proper, what is right. And that's not an easy thing to do. So again, I applaud you. Thank you so much for coming. Aside from being in the People's Liberation Army as a soldier back in the 70s and a law student in the 80s, he's now an attorney who's well known for his practice here in New York. Mr. Lee was the person who organized the Autonomous Workers Union, the first such union in communist China. And that's a rare feat, that's beautiful. My grandfather was a union organizer back here, but I think that as hard as it was back in the 1920s in this country, what you had to do must have been so much harder. Thank you.
Thank you.
Uh, Mr. Li was also spent 2 years in jail before coming here, or shall we say escaping to here. And works currently as an immigration lawyer here in New York, a well-known dissident, and he hosts a Chinese YouTube channel about American law. And he has been the historical, the historical consultant for the show. So it really couldn't have happened without him. Thank you. Thank you. So we're going to start out asking them a couple of questions. And my first one is for Wang, okay? This, you can sit, it's okay. I like to project, I guess, but it's, this is about a soldier-student gay couple trying to survive the Tiananmen crackdown, all right? You've done a lot of research about LGBT issues in China. So my question for you is, what is it like for a gay person to be living in the time of Tiananmen Square in a culture that is still so difficult and is still illegal to be gay?
I was speaking Chinese and you have interpreter here.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yes. The questions first.
Yeah.
Yeah. Question is question.
Yes.
Yeah. Translate into Chinese. Okay.
We'll get this down. Oh, yes, please.
王丹先生，这个戏剧是关于一对军人学生，然后他们是同性恋情侣，然后他们试图在天安门屠杀中存活。你对于这个 LGBTQ 的群体在中国做了很多的调查研究，那么想问一下您。作为一个同性恋的人士，在天安门广场大屠杀这个时间去生活在那个时间的话，他们会面对一些什么样的困难？
中国的1980年代，其实我相信有大量的 LGBT 的群体存在。
I believe there was a large population of homosexual people in China toward the end of the 80s.
但整体来讲，当时的中国社会对这个 LGBT 群体完全没有一个非常清晰的一个认知。
However, the society in general did not have a clear recognition of the LGBTQ group of people.
我相信对很多的中国1980年代的同志，他们自身来讲，他们对于自己是不是同志都没有一个非常清楚的认识。
I believe for most of the LGBT group themselves, they didn't even have a clear recognition of they are within the LGBT group themselves.
所以可以说，在当时的中国根本就不存在 LGBT 的问题。
So we can say that China at that time there did not exist problems with the LGBTQ group.
对当时的中国的这些同志们来讲，不是一个come out 一个出柜的问题，这主要是他们是不是同志的问题。
So for the LGBTQ group people back then in China, the problem wasn't really about coming out, but it was about having realized that they were actually homosexual.
My next question is for JinJin. Mr. Li, you served in the People's Liberation Army years before the Tiananmen Square protest. What was it like for someone who was a soldier caught up in what can only be described as a brutal crackdown against your own people?
李先生，你之前在中国的人民军队里面服役过， 请问您作为一个军人，参与到这个残暴的天安门镇压活动中，是什么样的一个体验感受？
首先要底气，首先要把verify 不 sorry clarify 什么？首先要那个把一些事情说清楚。我当时呢已经是不是战士了，我是在71年的76年的时候是中国人民解放军的战士。
So I need to clarify something first. I wasn't a soldier at the time of the Tiananmen Square crackdown. I was only a soldier at the time from 1971 to 1976.
And then I became a policeman. 然后我就做了一个警察。在天安门那个时候呢，我已经是一个 over 30 students, PhD student at Peking University Law School.
At the time of Tiananmen Square crackdown, I was a student at the Beijing Law School and a PhD candidate.
是这样，就是
Thank you。是这样，那个我做一个做过当时的警察，后来学过中国法律的。我补充一下王丹的问题，回答，然后再回答你的问题。
So as someone who studied law, I need to say more things about the earlier questions.
对，我想在中国那个时候呢，所有关于同性恋的问题呢，它只是把它规范在一个不当的性行为这个范围来看待。
I think all the problems for the LGBTQ group was categorized as improper sexual behaviors at the time.
So 那个时候的中国法律有一条规定，叫做流氓罪。
So there was actually a law in China about this. Called hooligan crime.
That's now 好像前几年中国政府刚刚把这条法律跟罪名取消掉了。
So they recently just canceled this law a few years ago.
That's a little bit of adding 一点点补充 ，OK。
Yeah, that's a little bit of background knowledge to have.
对于这个今天主持人的问题，我想呢，应该是如果我是战士在那个时候，是吧？我会怎么样的反应？或者当时的中国的这个参与镇压的战士，实际上是一个什么的态度？
So for this question, I think it is about what if I was a soldier at the time, what would my reactions be, and what would the actual reactions for the soldiers at the time?
Yes.
If I were, okay.
Oh, yes.
No.
I understood that you were.
Okay. 首先来讲，这是一个非常给我来讲是非常难回答的一个问题，因为那个时候我已经从一个年轻人步入到30岁的年龄，所以也对我来讲非常困难说 if I were。
It is actually hard for me to answer this question because at the time I wasn't a young student anymore. I was already at my 30s.
但是我根据当时的情况来看，和我们做一个当过军人的感觉来看，就像我觉得当初的这种参与镇压的士兵和今天俄国罗斯的士兵侵略乌克兰很接近。我是感觉从媒体上得到的消息。
But speaking for the experience, my experience as a soldier before, and I feel that this experience is very similar to today's Russia's invasion to Ukraine.
就是说，那些士兵们，他们不知道来干什么的。
Those soldiers didn't know what they were doing at the time.
他们在1989年5月20号，中国中央政府下达了戒严令以后，开始进驻北京。
Many troops started entering Beijing after the government declared martial law on May 20th, 1989.
但是他们都被北京的市民们拦在了郊区。
But they were stopped by Beijing civilians in the suburban area near Beijing.
所以北京市民每天就跟他们送水，跟他们说好话，说人民军队就是当时的一句话，叫做“军民鱼水情”。
So the citizens were very nice to the soldiers. They sent water to them, and they also call it. They had a very good relationship through sending the water.
As fish and water. OK， 所以他们没有任何反应，他们也没有说好，也没有说支持北京的人民，或者没有支持这个运动，他们对运动也不了解，所以他们也不知道来做什么，这是当时的士兵的一般的反应。
So the soldiers didn't really have any reactions. They didn't express any support for the suppression of the movement, or they didn't know what it was about, and they didn't know what they were doing there.
但是，一旦发生了这个命令一定强制进城的话，他们也一定要执行。
However, once they receive an order to enter the city by force, they have to enforce that order.
这就像在6月3号晚上发生的事情一样。
It is exactly like what happened in June 3rd,
1989.
1989.
Thank you.
Thank you. Reminds me of the soldiers in Russia who had no idea what they were walking into. Wang, you are the most visible face of the Tiananmen protests, according to me. You were at one point at the top of China's most wanted list, as I understand it. Yes. How lucky for you. So here you were, arrested twice, having to deal with all of this, and possibly even maybe facing worse, right? And yet you spoke out. You continued to speak out. So my question for you is, what about other people? What if some of them try to speak out even now, today, against the government? What would happen to them?
我想我要非常清楚地告诉在座的各位就是在今天的中国，人权方面比我在中国的1980年代还要退步得多。
I have to tell everyone clearly that today's China is going backwards on human rights issues when compared to the 1980s.
那么今天如果我还生活在中国的话，我想，如果我还继续公开批评政府的话，我很可能就不会再活着了。
And today, if I live in China and I keep criticizing the government, I think it is likely that I will no longer survive.
大家知道，就是即使是诺贝尔和平奖得主刘晓波，都死在了监狱里。
And I think everyone knows that even for the Nobel Prize winner for peace, Liu Xiaobo, he's also died in prison.
那刘晓波是一个非常好的例子，告诉我们说，中国现在的人权状况已经类似于人类历史上的中世纪。
And I think he is a very good example to telling us that China now is very similar to the Middle Ages now.
但是我很遗憾看到，全世界对刘晓波的去世都已经忘记了。
But I'm sorry to see that the world has already forgotten the pass away of Liu Xiaobo.
全世界现在也不怎么谈香港的问题了。
And the world is not talking about problems in Hong Kong anymore.
这种遗忘其实都是为了得到中国的钱。
And all this are probably because they want China's investments.
我认为现在的这个时代是人类历史上非常可耻的一个时代。
And I think now it is a very shameful period of time in human history.
因为我们太容易忘记苦难。
Because it is so easy for us to forget these sufferings.
Thank you. JinJin, I want to follow up a little bit on what I was asking before. I understand that after the crackdown, while you were in jail for 2 years, in the infamous JinJin prison, where a lot of politicians got to be stuck. You met a soldier who was actually part of the crackdown, and you got to speak with him about that. How was it for you to have that chance encounter? What was that like?
李先生，在天安门屠杀之后，您做过2年的奴劳，在青城监狱，然后那个监狱里面关了很多的政治犯，您在那里遇到过一个参与了这个天安门屠杀的军人，请问，您能告诉我们一下这次经历吗？
是的，我当时是住过不同的监狱，第一个监狱是炮局胡同，第二个是这个半浦桥看守所，第3个是秦城。那么在王丹他们一直在秦城，那么我们是作为工人的这个的代表，关押在普通的这个刑事犯一起。
So I was incarcerated at 3 different places. One was Paoju Hutong Detention Center. The second one was Bamboo Bridge Detention Center, and the third one was the Qingcheng prison. And I was kept there with criminal suspects that were once soldiers and policemen.
因为我是这个工人的代表。
And because I was the representative of the workers.
所以我们的待遇和他们学生领袖的待遇要差一点。
So we were treated a little worse than the student representatives.
那个在半步桥监狱的时候碰到一个军人，因为他的这个谋杀他的女朋友，和我关在一起。
And I met a soldier. He was kept there for murdering his girlfriend in Bamboo Bridge Detention Center.
然后因为半步桥是北京市只管理反面犯和这个管理反犯和这个杀人犯的这样一个监狱。
And because the Bamboo Bridge Detention Center was keeping murderers and the political criminals.
Counter-revolutionary crimes. OK， 那当时他进来以后呢，他恰恰是第38军的1989年6四的时候，他正好是进驻北京38军的一个战士。
And this soldier, he was from the 38th Army back then, and he was demobilized back to Beijing at the time.
所以我跟他在一起待了几天。
I stayed with him for a few days.
然后他马上就转到别的更严厉的这个看守的房间里去了。
Then he was transferred to a much harsher cell room.
那么我很关心他们当时进北京的情况。
I really cared about how did they enter Beijing.
然后我现在记得他跟我说的2点，第一点就是他是38军从石家庄出发，是在1989年4月25号左右就开始从石家庄出发，准备进驻北京。
He told me that they started entering Beijing from Shijiazhuang at April 25th, 1989.
那是差不多1个月戒严命令之前的1个月。
This is roughly about a month earlier than the martial law.
所以说，邓小平在1989年4月就已经决定用军事解决我们学生的问题。
So the leader at the time, Deng Xiaoping, has already decided to use military force to solve the problems at the time.
这是第一点。第二点来讲，在广场的时候，我说你们到底接到命令开枪的命令了没有？
And then I asked him whether they did receive order to fire toward people at the Tiananmen Square.
他说是到了比较晚的时候，6月3号比较晚的时候，应该在10点钟左右。
He said on the night of June 3rd, near 10 o'clock,
他们是收到了可以向人们的膝盖以下开枪
they received the order that they could fire at people below their knees.
，aiming at，比较的意思。that's 所以这个等于是一个开枪的命令。
So this equals an order to fire at people.
这就是我当时和这个战士所交流了解的情况。
And this is what I learned from talking to that soldier.
Thank you.
Lovely. We are going to have to get moving, so I'm going to ask two brief questions for you. Wang, I understand that you and the playwright, who, as you all know, it must remain anonymous for reasons I already said, that you're considering doing something further with this show, possibly even looking at doing a screenplay. What is it that you feel you can do with that? Why do you want to do that?
我觉得好莱坞不应该只想着赚钱，应该做一些有意义的事情。
I think that Hollywood shouldn't be just making money, they should do something more meaningful.
我希望就是有一部电影，能够让全世界人民，包括美国人民都知道，就是在1989年发生的事情。
I hope that there can be a film letting everybody, including Americans, know what happened in 1989.
我希望全世界都知道，中国人民也是非常渴望民主的。
I hope the world to know that Chinese people also want democracy.
我希望全世界都知道，只要中国共产党还存在，中国就永远不会有民主的那一天。
I hope the world to know that as long as the CCP exists, there will never be democratization in China.
最后，我也希望大家都知道，只要中国共产党存在，中国早晚有一天会跟美国成为敌人。
I also want everyone to know that as long as the CCP exists, China will sooner or later become an enemy for the
这
Americans.
就是我希望通过电影传达的信息。
And this is the information I hope to pass on from the movie.
Thank you. And clearly they're not helping very much with Putin right now. So, JinJin, as you can see, we have people from all backgrounds in life, right? And in particular, if there was somebody here today who was a soldier, who was participating in the crackdown, I want to know, what would you say to that person?
我想的话呢，如果他今天在我们的观众席当中，那么他已经有了反省。
I think that if there is a soldier who participated in the crackdown and he's in our audience today, I think that he already has regretted.
所以我就希望他站起来，对大家说对不起，我们当年错了。
So I hope that he can stand up and tell us that sorry, what they did was wrong.
那么人民军队永远不能对人民开枪。
So the military army should never be opening fire to people.
Thank you. But I'll add one word. 10年以前，我真的碰到这么一个战士，
So
到我这里来申请政治庇护。
So I really met this soldier 10 years ago who applied for asylum from me.
他是29军的一个战士。
He was a soldier at the 29th Army.
他告诉我他参与了这个军队的这个进的任务。
He told me that he was participated in this particular order.
So I reject it. 我把它干掉了。
So I reject this application.
We're going to have to start momentarily, but I want to bring up a friend of mine who I think is quite relevant to today's show. Retired Justice Doris Lynn Cohen. I was the founder of an LGBTQ organization in the New York State court system back in 2003, and at a time when it was very hard to be out in the courts, and it was not great for us. And during that time, I got to meet Justice Lynn Cohen after her courageous decision on a case known as Hernandez v. Robles. This was the first decision by a justice in New York State ordering that the state must recognize same-sex marriage. And Doris has gone on to become a darling of our community. We love her for this. She's helping on so many things, and I'm so grateful that she came here tonight.
Thank you very much. So I'm not going to speak for a long time because I know you're anxious to see this play. So the themes we're exploring tonight, I have not seen this play, but as I understand, is courage and change. So the year is 2005, and I issue this decision that says, yes, same-sex couples can marry because love is love, right? We all know this. In 2005, that was unheard of in New York State. I was the first and only judge in New York State to hold that, which I found self-evident, and the third trial judge in the country. So, as you can expect, in 2005, this was not considered a popular decision by any stretch of the imagination. So, of course, the governor spoke against me, the mayor spoke against me, even the New York Times spoke against me. And I issued this decision around Chinese New Year's. And I was elected out of Chinatown. So I'm the first Asian American elected for any government office out of Chinatown. All right? So I'm kind of like a favorite daughter of Chinatown because I made history with their help. So I was a little bit nervous about going to the Lunar New Year festivities, which I always do every single year. And I walk into Chinese Consolidated Benevolent Association, which is the town hall of Chinatown, the town hall of the Chinese community. And one of the elders, who I frankly didn't even know spoke English, says to me, "The Daily News said you're courageous." I said, "What?" I was a little bit shocked. And not everybody had that kind of reaction, but I was really welcomed. And so there is change. There is open-mindedness in our community. We know that, right? We are very resilient people. We know that there will be change. And somebody who really helped me in my campaign didn't really understand. I heard it not through him, but through somebody else. And I said, and the person told me, said, you know, he's a little bit upset about your decision. And I said, well, you know, I understand that change is difficult and you may not understand, but I want to tell you a little bit of story, which is there was this legal case which Asian Americans had brought. And it turned out that the court ruled against them, okay? And everybody, it was clear it was discrimination, it was clear, but nonetheless, Congress tried to solve the problem. The only group they excluded was this group, the plaintiffs, the Asian Americans. And I said, We did not like that. We thought this was wrong. So how can we, as a country, say that only certain people can get married? Only certain people can go. So once I explained it that way, he got it. And he embraced me. He said, I understand. So change can be hard. You know, we have to have courage to do that. And I know you've been waiting for this play, but I want to tell you one more story about you.
For you, go.
One more story. So I had the privilege to host many judges from China in my courthouse and part of the Bar Association. And I hosted this particular group just before COVID, and it was a lot of commercial lawyers from China and judges. And we were at the New York City Bar Association, which is a very fancy bar association in Midtown. And I told this story that in 2005 I issued this decision, and the governor spoke against me, everybody spoke against me, but 10 years later, the United States Supreme Court agreed with me. Yes, the chief judge agreed with me. Just like you clapped, guess what? Every single person, now I'm talking about like 50 lawyers and distinguished lawyers and judges from China clapped, okay? From China. So I will tell you that there are many people in China who believe that this is the right thing. This is the right thing. And so when people speak against the government, they're not against the government. They're for change. They want our lives to be better. And I hope people hear that. And I want to acknowledge courage in this room today. The two of the plaintiffs in the lawsuit that was brought in my courtroom are here. And they're real, you know, after I had the privilege of marrying them, like 10 years later, right? We waited, and I was able to marry them, and they are such advocates for change that they immediately went to CNN and explained that the world did not collapse. They got married, they had been together for decades, they raised two wonderful children, and they had the courage to be plaintiffs in my lawsuit. So change will happen, all right? We all have to have courage. Not you. Thank you very much.
And George, thank you for, despite being the fact that you're married to a man, not a woman, you kept one foot in each community, and you've been loved by us for that. So I want to just thank everybody involved in this tonight. It's an honor to be able to be involved with this. I'm very grateful, and so I thank you both for coming and sharing your courage with us. Thank you.